What's happening, guys? And welcome back to the channel. And last night, in front of 65,000 people in the Wembley sunshine, England beat Andorra 4-0. And George, I have to say, we learned very little from this. There were a whole raft of changes, with Trent Alexander-Arnold being deployed in a midfield position for the first time in an England shirt. We saw a debut for Patrick Bamford, and we also saw Reece James and Kieran Trippier featuring in the fullback positions, and a rare start for the talented Jude Bellingham in midfield. But as I mentioned at the top of the video, George, we didn't learn anything at all from this fixture, did we?
No, I suppose from a positive aspect, the manager gets a chance to look at some of the fringe players who wouldn't necessarily feature. So that's a plus. And it's an opportunity, if any, to experiment with tactics. But again, when you're playing teams like Andorra, even if you try a completely different formation or personnel and it works really well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work against the better teams. And it's just a pointless exercise for me. I really do think something needs to be done. I mean, I was bored watching it. We all knew that England were going to win. It was just a question of how many goals. And actually, to only win 4-0, I mean, this shows the kind of amount of criticism England fans have on our nation, but to only win 4-0 was pretty poor, to be honest with you. I know we did tinker a lot with the personnel in the side, but there's still enough quality on that pitch to be scoring more than 4 against teams like Andorra. But other than that, mate, yeah, it was just going through the gears, and if we at best got to gear 2, yeah, I suppose the only nice thing is that some of them got their first caps or their first appearances. So that's a positive. Other than that, mate, yeah, pointless.
What did you think of Patrick Bamford's debut? I thought he did okay. Not a lot of opportunities. Again, you've got to realise that he's not playing with all the first choice players. So he's not going to be getting as much service, as many chances as if he was playing with, the full strength side around him. So I thought, I've seen some harsh criticism of him, which I think is unjust. I think he did a solid job, but nothing spectacular. But again, it's hard in these games, like making your debut. Yes, you'd like to score, but he didn't have a lot of service. What did you make of him?
Yeah, I mean, it is also difficult playing a side that have no aspirations of trying to go forward and win the game, because they know they're going to be up against it. So they just sit 10 behind the ball and just hope that they can keep in some sort of keep it competitive. The pressure's a lot because he's basically being asked, this is your one opportunity. You might not get another one this year to play for England and start. We kind of just learned he's down the pecking order, which is exactly where he was initially before the game kicked off. So really, he doesn't really learn anything. I suppose Southgate really just has to beg the question now, is Bamford an option if all else fails? But really, I think it's bar a horrible freak accident where everyone gets injured. I think Patrick Bamford, unfortunately, is just a bench warmer for England. That's just the way it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'd 100% agree with that. I don't necessarily think he's any worse than Calvert-Lewin or Ollie Watkins. I think I'd put him ahead of Ollie Watkins. I think obviously he's probably slightly behind Calvert-Lewin. I don't really think there's an awful lot in there. But yeah, ultimately, if he's making squads, he's got to realise that he's really only going to feature from the bench. And unless we're playing teams like Andorra, then he's not going to get many minutes at all. But George, an interesting experiment, I suppose a great time to test it out, but ultimately it didn't really come to very much, was Trent Alexander-Arnold being deployed in that 3-man midfield with Jordan Henderson and Jude Bellingham. It was subsequently switched to right back at half-time with Reece James going into midfield for about 15, 20 minutes of the second half. Trent struggled to get on the ball in midfield, didn't he?
Yeah, I think a few people mentioned this before the Euro squad came out. I remember Jamie Carragher saying that, Trent should be deployed in a midfield area. And we spoke to Olivia Bazaglo, who was saying something similar about Reece James on the podcast. So, again, an interesting selection, but I have no problems with Gareth Southgate, trying things like that. I think, if anything, I'd actually encourage it in games like this to just see if it goes. It doesn't matter if it goes wrong, if he struggles to get on the ball, and he's going to be naturally uncomfortable because for his club, he doesn't play there. So you're asking a lot, but it's trial and error. I think, again, his best position is wing back, and I think that's, again, he's going to struggle because there are players in front of him, particularly Kyle Walker, who will still have the first team nod. But no, it didn't really work out. We didn't really notice anything. But midfield is an area for England that is particularly is that one area where we're not particularly set. We know that Kane's going to play up top, and we've got so many players in luxury positions in the front three, and we know pretty much our strongest back four, and we've actually got a lot of options there as well. But midfield's probably our weakest area, so I'm all for trying different things.
Yeah, 100%. And as I said, I think it's a perfect opportunity to try it against this level of opposition. But ultimately, it didn't work out. I'm not sure if this will be the end of the Trent experiment in midfield. I mean, to only give it a half against Andorra, I don't think that's given it a proper crack. But it remains to be seen as and when it's going to be tested again. But talking of that midfield, I thought someone who was outstanding on the night and has showed a lot of promise who's going to be a top pro. I thought Jude Bellingham was outstanding. He was sourcing in the middle of the park. He was, really looking good. He's an exciting prospect for the future and could be the mainstay of that England midfield for many years to come.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think he's an exciting prospect, showing such maturity for someone who's so young, still learning his trade at Dortmund, obviously. And I'm surprised clubs didn't really go or push to get him as much. I think, what is he, 17, 18?
18 now.
18. So, yeah, I'm surprised, but I think he's made the right decision by staying there. And yeah, he had a good game. Some players just naturally, take their opportunities when it gets to this sort of level, and some players don't. And what we've just, spoken about Patrick Bamford, someone who probably struggled to take the limelight because he knows that Harry Kane's such a high player. But in that midfield, there's competition for places, and I think Jude Bellingham's one of those players who really did lace up his boots and go for it, and took that opportunity. So he'd be one that I think Southgate, after that match, will be looking at for someone he can look at to, if things change in games or we play higher opposition, he'd like to see how he's tested against a bit of a stronger opposition, perhaps.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him. And obviously, ultimately, a flurry of goals in the last 20 minutes, a couple from Jesse Lingard, a penalty from Harry Kane, and another goal from Bukayo Saka 5 minutes from the end, rounded out a kind of convincing 4-0 win. George, just the last thing on this. Were you quite surprised to see Jack Grealish, Mason Mount, and I can't remember the last one now, to come on the Harry Kane, to come on for the last half hour? I would have thought this would be the perfect opportunity just to give those boys a complete rest. And with your club head on, you'd be a little bit annoyed that they played some part in this game, because it's absolutely pointless and you're running risk of injury to key players.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why he did that. I don't know why he felt the need when the game was pretty much, it was done before we even kicked off, let's be honest with you. To bring on those players, as a club manager, you're going to be absolutely fuming, because picking up a knock or something in a game like that, there's obviously been a big division in recent years between club and country, and who should really have priority. Bear in mind that it's only a national duty, but it's voluntary essentially to play for England, whereas they are contracted by their clubs and they pay big money for them to be fit. So yeah, I was surprised by that. I thought it would have been a good opportunity just to bring on some other players and just give it another go. So I don't know what Southgate's thinking was there, but yeah, no idea.
Well, but as always, a resounding win in the Wembley sunshine. There'll be much tougher tasks ahead. Obviously, England now head on to Poland away on Wednesday night before the Premier League resumes this weekend. But yeah, guys, as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we'll catch you in the next one.